my lawn, kids! Oh, hey! Find it Freddy here. I wasn't sleeping. I was looking through clues. That's what I do. If there's a clue out there, I'm gonna find it. That's why they call me Find It Freddy. I can solve any case, no matter how difficult. And I have found some doozies so far in my latest case. The mystery of the regular reveal. But even with all my clues, I still haven't figured out why the birth of our Savior wasn't a big fancy event. Here's what I got so far. A long time ago, back in the Bible times, everyone was called to go to their birthplace to be counted. One night this couple, Mary and Joseph, showed up in the town where Joseph was born, Bethlehem. You see, Mary was expecting a baby, and it wasn't just any old baby. It was a special baby. And it was about time for the baby to be born. But there was a problem. There were no rooms for them to sleep in. So they had to stay out in the stable. Out there with all the animals is where Mary gave birth to the Savior Jesus. They wrapped him up and put him in the manger. That's a big clue. A manger. Like a feeding trough for animals. Sure, it's kind of weird to have a baby in a barn, depending on what part of the country you're from. But it's especially weird if the baby is a king, which Jesus was. You would think there would be parades and celebrities, balloon animals, but there weren't, because there were only a few people who knew that this baby Jesus was so important. In fact, Jesus was promised to them 700 years earlier. At that time, enemies were closing in on God's chosen people, and the people were scared. It makes sense. So God used his prophet Isaiah to give them a message. That's what being a prophet is, someone who shares what God has to say. And what did God have to say? That God himself would one day come and save them because Jesus is God. So God's people had new hope, and they waited. For a long time, actually. 700 years. Remember? But if it was me waiting, I'd imagine that this important Savior would come to the most important people first, like rich people, or fancy people, or famous people, or the guy who delivers my mail. But instead, after Jesus was born in a stable, God's messengers announced the good news to some regular old shepherds. That's a clue. And I don't get it. I guess that's why they called it a mystery. I don't know. Here's how it went down. That same night that Mary gave birth to our Savior, some shepherds were watching sheep in the hills nearby. An angel of the Lord shows up, scares the shepherds half to death, but then tells them to not be afraid because there's good news. Over in Bethlehem, the new Savior for all people is wrapped up cozy and lying in a manger. There's that clue again. Then suddenly there's a whole lot of angels in the sky, and they all start praising God. Woo! I bet that was a sight and sound. Anyway, back to the shepherds. They hurried to find the Savior. They had a chance to see him with their own eyes, celebrate him, and then tell everyone of the news as fast as they could. But why them? Why didn't the angels show up for someone richer or more powerful first? Mary and Joseph were just regular people. The stable was ordinary. The manger was ordinary. Shepherds, ordinary. Even now I'm amazed by this story, but I'm just a regular guy. Wait, maybe that's the point. The Savior was born for everyone, right? He wasn't just born for rich people or fancy people or famous people. He was also born for regular people like me. And we're all his children, see? We all get to celebrate because Jesus, the Messiah, heals everything that's broken and brings true joy to everyone who knows him. Jesus is our joy. That means us, now, just like them, then. All right, another case closed. But just because it's closed doesn't mean you have to stop celebrating. I know I won't. Ready for some balloon animals.